So welcome in the new podcast for content creators focused around publishing content for developers. This podcast has not a name yet. The draft name that we have right now is Beyond Programming. But if you have any ideas how we can improve on that, feel free to reach out to us. Welcome. I'm Seb.
And I'm Fede. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. We will host this podcast bi-weekly, I think. This is the first episode, and I hope you will find it.
Yes.
So let's start. Why do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Federico. I'm from Argentina. I live in Cordova. I've been a Ruby developer since I've been working professionally since then. I always had an inclination to teach. I really like teaching. I'm that person that finished my project in class and then help others do stuff because I really liked explaining things. And for a long time, I wanted to create my own not streaming, screencasting service, which I'm doing right now. Haven't launched them yet, but yeah, I'm working on that. I've been working mostly in Rails projects, but I had a couple of just Ruby projects under my belt. And that's mostly me. I've written a book last time we record because this is not our first recording, to be honest. I forgot to set up the actual recording. So last time we just streamed. But yeah, and you mentioned my book, which I always forget. I wrote a book about Roda a while ago, which is now open source and has been maintained for a couple of years by the creator of Roda, Jeremy Evans, who I really appreciate doing because he really did a great job with the book. Yeah, that's me. How about you, Seb?
It's super fun that you are saying you forget about mentioning a book, which for me is like a tremendous effort. It's like just a lot of work put, and I can't imagine how can you forget this.
The way I wrote the book was the same way you write a course. It started as a course, and then I took all the scripts and I made it a book, and I just wrote a couple of feelings to actually connect everything a bit more in a more cohesive way. So yeah, it was a big effort, but not more effort than you have done.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from my side, I'm Seb. I'm an author of Hanami Mastery blog, the screencasting platform for focus on Hanami framework, Ruby framework, and the framework agnostic libraries written in Ruby. And I have around 10 years of experience as a Ruby developer, pure Ruby really. I never enjoyed anything else as much. I enjoy Ruby. So, for example, once I found that Bridgetown is released is a thing, I immediately started to considering as just the only thing I will write my side projects with because it's just pure Ruby. And I never considered like changing technologies or just reading something else. But aside of that, similar to you, I always tried to share my knowledge and just share with people everything I know. Hanami Mastery is my fourth blog. I wrote 3 blogs before and never with a great success. I cannot say that, but each one was considered to be way better than the previous one. So I tried to learn from my mistakes. And this is something I just enjoy doing. And yeah, now we are here. Starting a podcast for content creators. Fede, do you think we are eligible to do? You are muted.
Sorry, I was saying, of course not, but we will do it anyway.
Yeah. It seems like you are never ready to do things that are important to you. So better start now.
Yeah. So my original intention for this podcast was to have a weekly meeting with you to talk about content creation and our journey through it. So I think we are eligible because we are both creating content. We both have some experience. I don't consider myself an expert. So please don't consider me an expert by any extent of the word. But yeah, it's a journey, and putting out
And
our experiences on the journey makes us eligible, I think.
And we want to invite experts to this podcast to interview
Yes.
them and ask them how they drive their businesses, how they manage their road to success, and how how their lives look behind the scenes. Because with what I found in terms of content creation is that at the end, you just see, as a viewer, you just see the final result. You don't see everything, like 99% that is behind the stance.
Yeah.
What it takes to actually create and publish content regularly, but also no benefits are visible for most of the people. Also, what I can find is just tips how to organize their lives. This is like a lot of people is surprised how these guys can do so much publications while managing families and the jobs like regular jobs. And this is also something that I was and am super curious about. So I definitely will try to ask experts how they do this because this is crazy sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And normally, at least for me, I see that almost for anything, podcasting, screencasting, and any other thing that gets published, you normally start seeing the creators once they reach some kind of success, some level of success, and not everything that they worked before. So yeah, the idea is to show all that missing part, everything you don't see.
So, what would be your goal to actually achieve by this podcast? You mentioned one thing that you wanted something like a mastermind with
Yeah.
me and other people that will appear in the show.
Yeah,
What else?
that's my first intention was to, yeah, as you said, have a weekly meeting with you and talk about what we are doing, how we are doing it, and learn from each other. And that for me, I don't know if that's exactly a mastermind, but it's oriented in that towards that. But then I thought that might be useful for someone else, sorry, for someone else other than the both of us. So having a podcast would be for other people maybe and useful, and they can learn as well. So yeah, initially my idea was just a mastermind, but I think this might help someone else. And that's very encouraging, I think. So that's another very big goal to provide some help or some tips or things that are useful for someone else. What about
Awesome.
you?
There are two key goals. First of all, I started reading a lot about networking. Like, there is not, I found that there is no way to grow if you will only talk with the same people you are talking daily currently. Because, and if you will really want to learn a lot, you just need to reach out to people that are way better than you to learn quicker. And I completely agree with that. And this podcast is somewhat gate at doors and to reach out to other people to have an excuse to talk with them. And maybe this is just one my personal thing. I also want this weekly call with you because I struggle with consistency. Like in content publication, consistency is the key. It's just the most important thing to just publish every week or every month or whatever, but just consistently. So you build the audience and you meet their expectations. And when I do things alone, I just struggle with it. And this is why I started Hanami Mastery with the intention to not doing it alone. And now we have a little team who helped me building this content together. But with meetings with you, expect, I hope, for some challenges and some like constructive feedback, some sparring, and sometimes maybe punch in the face to, when you say like, Seb, you're just screwing up. Why are you not working? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just sit down and write something. And this will, I hope it will help in long term. And the final, and I think most important thing is that I would love to inspire others to start writing, or maybe not writing, maybe podcasting or screencasting or writing books or just made some talks because I experienced so much benefits from being a content publisher. Even though I am not super successful nor like very known person, still for my personal career as a developer, it helped me like crazy. And
Sorry
yeah,
to interrupt, but you have a bit of success right now.
a bit. Yeah, of course, a bit, I would say definitely. But I'm already hitting like a few steps forward. But this is a trap if you start comparing yourself, it's like it's not healthy at all. You can say I have a success, I can say I have not success yet, and things like that, because you always will find someone who has a bigger audience, bigger blogs, more content published, more earnings, more everything.
Yeah.
So comparing to other people is not too healthy in my. It's very demotivating, and but myself, I found very useful if I compare myself with me from the past, and that helps me a lot. And if I will compare myself with the myself from the year ago, yeah, there is a huge progress. Definitely in terms of content publication, it's a huge progress. In terms of my developing like programming career, also this is a huge progress. So in this term, I can see a lot of success. However, I did not meet any of my goals that I had listed for this year. I had a plan for my Hanami Mastery content publication, and I didn't reach any of that. But other unexpected things happened that actually made me progressing in this field, which is funny because after writing for a blog, I thought I know something about the content publications, and then it appears that I know nothing.
Yeah.
So those are the goals. I hope by doing this podcast and bringing other people and showing behind the scenes of how they drive businesses, I hope it will inspire. It will lower the barrier and explain some caveats for starting content publications. What could you do with it, and what obstacles you can meet? And maybe with this, we will inspire other people to start writing and have their careers by that.
I really adhere to that goal. It wasn't mine at first, but I might steal it as well.
Yeah, we are doing things together.
Yeah.
So of course we will share some goals. And over time, I guess when we will adapt to each other, those goals will be more shared and less separate, right?
Yes. It's like,
But we need to start somewhere. So what would be the next point of the episode?
okay, we are the next point we have scheduled to talk is discuss topics relevant for content creation for devs. Yeah, one of the ideas for this podcast is to talk about anything that relates to content creation and probably some technical things as well, some technical topics.
Yeah, so we are jumping to the format of this podcast, right? What
Yeah,
do
exactly.
we want this podcast to be like, right?
Yeah. So yeah, talk about related to first of all what we do and anything related to content creation, and as I said, a bit of technical knowledge as we encounter.
Yeah.
What else?
Also, I want to invite, as I mentioned before, we want to invite and interview folks who publish the content already, who has blogs, who have screencasts, who build communities. For example, there is a recent example of Brandon Weaver, who started a Ruby Learning Center. This is great community that just appeared like mushrooms after the rain, like immediately in one night, like hundreds of people just immediately signed off, and a lot of great folks. And I was observing that, and I could not believe, and I was like, how did he do it? Just please share. It's so exciting to just see the effect and how much preparation it would take, or what actually impacted that, how he built this kind of network that people from the level of, yeah, just the top Ruby devs actually trusted him and just immediately jumped in to help junior developers within this Discord channel that he built. That was exciting. But there are more. Yeah, they definitely want to have a chance to talk with those people and ask about few hacks, how they actually do it, or what we can learn from them.
Yeah. So anything we can from that
Yeah,
and publish it for everyone else.
exactly.
Yeah, the other thing we format wise, we are gonna target bi-weekly episodes, even though we will be recording for a while at least weekly and we'll be streaming. We will be releasing them bi-weekly. We have some in store for when we go on vacation or if something comes along. And maybe at some point we will start releasing them weekly if we can, but there's no promise there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the last point?
Then the quite of exciting one. We plan to do QA sessions for this podcast and included them here. So in the time between episodes, we will collect some questions from people and we will try to answer them, prepare and answer like any kind of like coding related or content creation related or anything else. We will try to answer them as much as we can. And hopefully this way we will also be able to help promising junior developers, promising writers, or maybe screencast makers. I don't know if this is even a job, but so during this live streaming, if we will continue with this streaming, this is not decided yet, but during this live streaming, you also can comment on the chat and ask some questions so we can answer them and address them immediately. So that would be the format that we have right now. And what else? I don't know there is anything else.
Regarding format, I think we are done. We have a topic for today that we want to discuss about choosing a name. And that's very relevant because we haven't chosen a name yet. There is one in the making, which I actually forgot. I'm sorry. Oh, it's beyond programming. And that's because we want to tackle topics that goes beyond programming, not just technical stuff, but going out there and producing, helping, and what I said.
Also, just we want to also target people who don't only program, only develop stuff, but actually do something else. For example, there are a lot of people who do open source after hours, right? Or treat their daily programming job as a part-time job, but in the remaining time they develop, for example, Slack bots or write books like Udemy courses. There are multiple ways to actually fulfill this gap of not working full time as a developer by doing other amazing stuff. And there is a lot of potential to get inspiration from other people. Yeah, this is why the draft that we have is beyond programming, to start wondering what people do, what the developers do, this except programming, which is the most obvious thing.
Do you find it easy or hard to pick a name for something?
Definitely hard.
Okay.
I can tell a story about multiple naming choices I made for my publications, if you think about
Yes,
it.
please go ahead.
There is, I'm Sebastian Wilgosz. This Wilgosz is my last name. So I had in the past a blog that was wilgosz.pl. PL is from Poland, right? I wrote this blog in Polish language, but it was oriented around Ruby because my company is just registered as my last name. That was funny because I myself did not read anything related to programming in Polish, but always in English. And it was very tough to actually write something in Polish if half of the words that I'm writing are in English because this comes from English language. And nobody's searching Google my articles, and that was tough. But my first name was just not related to the content that I was publishing. It was related to my name, my last name, because I wanted to promote my personal branding as a person. But it didn't work out. I thought maybe better would be to not relate what I'm doing with my family name, with my last name. Maybe it would be nice to step aside and just do not allow people to know that I'm the author. And I wanted to just split my personal life, my personality, that just out of what I'm doing as a professional. And my next blog was complete random thing. I just
That's a great name.
yeah, but it's hard to even it's hard to even tell it. And when you need to tell it for like thousands of people, how to spell your email address, it's crazy. But anyway, the second name was just random name. It meant nothing, and it appears that the success of it was way greater. It was completely not related to the content I was publishing. So this was pretty funny because it showed me that the name doesn't really matter so much. It doesn't really matter so much. The content is the thing that actually brings your audience and allow your people to come back. If people will like you, if people think this is valuable what you are writing about, this is way more important. So my next blog was a way bigger success, and it was connected to the Rise API course I published on Udemy. This blog was an extension that supplemented this course content. It was targeted for my students, and they were very much willing to share these articles with the other world. So it showed me a very important thing, that when I have a clear focus, who I target, who I write for, it actually clicked, and it gave way better effects.
Yep.
And for the last project I have, this is the Hanami Mastery. That was a completely different story. Just the naming choice is pretty interesting because, first of all, I knew nothing about Hanami when I started writing a blog about Hanami. So I needed to choose a name, and I wanted to be expert in Hanami, of course. But by doing this blog, I wanted to show my path, my road to become an expert. And I wanted to help people who read this to become an expert. And that was my initial thought. But the other thing is that I was inspired by all these content publications and screencasting. I was inspired heavily by Ryan Bates from Risecasts, and also by the Greg Pollack, who was the author of Code School. This Code School is not existing anymore.
Yeah, it's been sold to a plural site, I think.
Yeah, so completely different thing. But I am observing this person, and Greg Pollack is engaged heavily into educating Vue.js community, and he has a YouTube channel named Vue Mastery. And I stole his Vue Mastery and connected with my idea of showing the roadmap, and I just replaced Vue with Hanami, and this ended up with Hanami Mastery. This was very clicky. A lot of people just very quickly, people started searching for Hanami Mastery in Google and typing Hanami Mastery in Google. And that was kind of surprising. But the downside was, because I had so official name, people started thinking I am a master of Hanami immediately and started to ask me questions I had no idea how to answer. But also they assumed that my blog is official, like supported by the core team and everything. But the core team didn't even knew about my existence at that point. So that was problems that I needed to clear out and announce that I am independent, like Hanami enthusiast, and just want to share what I know and help some people. And this is just my role.
Yeah, and I think Hanami is right now is a pretty niche topic because it's not just starting, but it's starting to gain popularity just now. So yeah, there are not many Hanami oriented blogs. Yeah, it makes it sound that you are official because there are not many. If you had a blog called Ruby Mastery, I don't think it will be connected in people's minds, the core team.
Yes, I think so. Some people consider Ruby being a niche, and if I'm working for Hanami, I'm writing about Hanami, this is a niche in a niche, and
yes,
that was a big risk from myself, definitely, to actually start writing a blog 2 years before the official version had been released.
But it paid off.
We'll see.
I hope. But you had, as I said before, you had a bit of success, and I think you are more popular than you think. I'm not, of course, I'm not attributing it just to the name. Because if you have just a name and no content, that doesn't work.
This is a great question and a great topic. I think we could discuss in a separate episode about that, because you are absolutely correct. I have no idea how popular I am. I don't even know how to research that, but also I don't get too much feedback. And I think a lot of creators actually struggle with collecting feedback. So for a long time, I didn't know if what I'm doing is actually a good thing, if people need it, if people want it, or if I cause more problems than it helps.
Sorry, do you have any feedback from the core team?
Yeah, but it's mixed feedback, because they really enjoy that I started blogging about Hanami and appreciate that. But it also caused a lot of problems. For example, when I published a video about a feature that was in development and it was changed after I published a video, people just reach out to everyone in the core team saying that this is not working, but you have tutorials about doing this way because this is Hanami Mastery, this is official, right? And things like that. And there was a lot of confusion in the community, especially because this community is very small. So at this point, I'm not super sure if I'm doing more good thing or more confusion. I bring more confusion to
When you thought about making it official, talking to the core team and maybe engaging with them on the content, at least on the topics to talk about?
Definitely, I will try again, of course. But when you're just starting, nobody really can trust you. You need to build your trust, right?
Yeah. But now that you cause problems, they should trust you.
I think what I proved is that I can publish content and I can publish it for a long time. But the focus for Hanami core team is actually the development. They really want to push their limited time and release the complete version of the framework. And they recently, like a few days ago, they released Hanami 2.0, which is a huge milestone. And the next focus would be to add a persistence and view layer to it to make it a complete framework, a complete Ruby application framework. And I think after that, definitely there will be more interest in marketing, content publications, and so on.
They need to win more terrain against Rails. I think so. Maybe doing basically what Jeremy Evans did with me. I published the book. I sent it to him. He reviewed it. He liked it and all of that. I started selling it. Then I stopped selling it because it got out of date. And he reached out to me and said, would you open source it? And he put it in the main page. So he's maintaining it. But in your case, you could maintain the content and they can curate it basically to allow you to have a lot of reach out to a lot of people.
So we'll see how the road goes and how the things will evolve. Of course, I am open to any kind of contributions, and I don't want to make Hanami Mastery alone, as I said. So whoever would like to contribute, I am open to discussions for sure.
We should invite them to talk because
And Jeremy,
it's a nice team.
also, if you have any contact to Jeremy, I would actually appreciate it.
I'll write to him to note this down because
I wanted to talk with him since I saw his SQL README for the first time. I think it's soon will cause problems on browsers while rendering. It's so extensive. There is so much content. I just wondering how does he do it? He's a so great developer, but he actually publishes content, manage books, as you said. His documentation is so great, and
he works for the U.S. government, and part of his work includes Roda and SQL and all those open source libraries. So he uses work time for that. So I think that's part of why he can produce so much, both content and libraries, because he's very active in development as well. At least I'm subscribed to the Roda mailing list, and every month for sure he's releasing something, but every other week as well. So there's a lot of.
This is something I also got inspired. I don't know who actually inspired me by doing this. But when I started Hanami Mastery blog, I was a Rails developer and I struggled with finding a time working on Hanami related stuff because it was a conflict of interest with my company. And I decided to change my career to work on the company who works with Hanami based project. And now producing content on Hanami Mastery is in direct test of the company I'm working on as a developer, because I educate people, I educate developers. It's easier to onboard them. I'm working also on the guides or helping with the documentation a bit. And this kind of stuff is merged together, but I'm not yet in a way that I can just use work time for making articles. But the research is there. The research is definitely there. I'm learning a lot in the work time. And how do you organize your day or week?
My days are a mess. I don't organize. No, I usually work during the mornings and then I spread it out in the afternoons a bit. I'm currently working freelance for a couple of small projects, and then the content producing is very spread out. Yeah, I need to get a lot better at organizing myself because it's always a struggle for me.
And do you feel like you've you over the week you work more than 40 hours or less, comparing like including your content creations on the projects?
No, right now definitely less, and that's because I've been experiencing some health issues, so I'm taking it very lightly. But it depends on the week. It depends on a lot of things. As I said, I'm working on freelance on smaller projects, so sometimes I need to work much more, and sometimes I have very, say, empty weeks. It comes and goes.
Got it.
What about you? You have a full time job. You might have very
Yes,
occupied schedule.
I do. And when I started with Hanami Mastery, things were just crazy. At that point, things were just crazy. So I was Rise developer, a full-time Rise developer, and I worked after hours to research, learn Hanami and record videos, write articles and do it all my own. And that was just hard. But over time, I simplified a lot of things. I changed my career and now I'm doing research within the company. I'm using company projects to learn stuff related to company. And this saves me tons of time. I started working on the guides and documentation to has an excuse to learn more code from the framework and has a direct access to the core team. So I could ask them something where I was blocked. And this saved me another tons of hours. Over time, I was collecting some sponsorship payments. Some companies started to sponsor my work. And good folks from the Ruby community also started supporting me on GitHub. And this allowed me to hire some people to help me with the video production. So now I have a lector and have a video producer, and you also started helping me with the actual content creation. So you came to the team and started writing a content and doing the research yourself to reduce some overload from me. And this is now the only reason why I actually can handle full-time job with the
Right.
content production, because I have people who help in every week. Over time, I definitely want to reduce my daily job to just work 4 days per week and have a full day for content creation. But it will take a while.
Cool. Yeah. So we derailed from the actual topic, I think. We were talking about choosing names.
What will be the conclusion before we start the Q&A?
Naming is hard. It's not as important as you might think, but it's hard, and you always want, as a creator, to have a great name.
Definitely.
But yeah, sometimes it's difficult to get a name. I just thought of a name for this podcast, and it might be the name is not important. The name doesn't matter.
One example of this is Hacker News. Do you know this
Yeah.
platform?
Yes.
Hacker News is so popular. It collects so much traffic, and the domain name is like ynewscombinator.com or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so
Yeah.
unrelated.
It's the content that
Exactly. The
pushes
content,
things.
the people that matters. Of course, it pays off if you have a great name as an addition to it, but you can always change the name.
Exactly.
Avdi is great example, right? That
Yeah. He changed the name from Ruby Tapas to Graceful Dev, and he's having a lot of success as well. Yeah.
So yeah, conclusion is naming is not too important, and the most important thing is to just start producing something.
Yeah. My great trick for choosing a name, not for podcasts and things like that, because I don't use this trick, but for libraries and projects and applications that I'm thinking of writing and whatever, I just take a look around and see something and I choose a name from that. For example, one of my latest projects, this guy. So this is Scrat from the Ice Age. So I have this flashy thing, flashy toy, and I chose Scrat as the name. I liked it. And as you said, the name can change afterwards. And then for my blog, the blog I've been writing for some time, which is Cool Developer, with a little hat over the U, which is basically an internal joke for myself. That's the way I choose names. Very randomly.
I also asked some existing podcasters, Ruby podcasters, to help us with choosing a name. but they were not too helpful. They all just choose a name in a similar manner.
Yeah.
They just choose a name which explains what they do,
Yeah.
or a random name that they like, and there is no great philosophy behind it.
Yeah. I think we will need to do something like that.
Okay. So, what do you think about jumping into the Q&A session?
Yes, sounds good.
We have collected 5 questions for this first episode, and the first one comes from the Abdullahi. The first two, actually. He sent us questions regarding getting jobs for juniors in Ruby and Rails community, since every job post requires many years of experience.
Yeah. We talked about this on Monday, but yeah, my first
No,
approach to this topic is to say that if you're a company and you need developers, consider hiring juniors. Don't ask for too much experience because there are a lot of great juniors coming out of code camps and things like that. I actually started a project a couple of years ago with my brother, and we hired 2 juniors, and they are very open to learning and very grateful for you correcting them and helping them progress. So if you want to actually make the Ruby community bigger and greater, hire juniors. If you're a junior looking for a job, don't be afraid of just posting yourself to a senior developer job. Don't lie about it. Don't lie about your experience. Just came out from a boot camp, and I know this is a unique experience, but this is what I know. That's my 2 cents. You might get hired anyways if they see if they see you are excited about getting this job. They will. If the company is open minded, you will probably get the job. And if you don't, it's a great experience as well.
I agree. Like, I agree that it is important to know why you are aspiring to a certain company, and it doesn't need to be the company itself. For, for example, I will put an example of how I got a job in Ascend, where I'm working right now. This is a financial company, and I had no experience with any kind of banking systems, any kind of loyalty calculations, or anything like that. And my motivations, when I'm looking for a job, my motivations are also always, I want to do something important for the world, change the world in some way, like leave a dent in the world after my time being there. And previously, I worked with the educational companies. I wanted to change or affect education also in the world, but also in the Poland itself, because I think there is a lot of room to improve here. But then I applied to Ascenda, not because of this company itself. I applied there because of the technology they used. I was so excited about the technology they used. I wanted to be part of it. I wanted to learn that part. I was excited on this. And I also really liked the people that talked with me. But I bet there are a lot of great folks in other companies as well. So there is nothing special in this particular part, right? And when they asked me why am I applying, I was just honest. Like, I wanted to work on the company that uses Hanami because I was excited with it, and I got the job. So this is really important to know this single reason why you are applying to.
Yeah, I agree completely. Honesty on a job interview is key for me. I
Yeah,
think
but
it.
I agree. I agree also that there is a problem with companies not hiring juniors or not saying that they hire juniors. In our
Yeah,
company, for example, there are no open positions for junior developers. However, we are open to hire juniors if there will be any like promising talents applying here, right?
yeah, that's
So I
great.
would love if that could help.
Yeah,
I would love if that could change in the future.
yeah. But listening to you saying that, that's another reason for you as a junior to apply to a company, even though the job description says senior. They might be looking for juniors and just not putting it out there.
Yeah, and I would also not be too sad if I get the rejection. I try to apply to multiple companies all the time. every time I change the job, but occasionally I also apply to companies without the intention of change a job, because I treat it some kind of like a sport. Getting through the interview process is also a skill, and from time to time refreshing the knowledge, what companies expect, what kind of steps are needed to pass. This is very useful because it reduces a lot of stress to me. I'm a person that actually very easily gets stressed out during the interview process. Even if I don't really need a job because I'm hired, I don't want to change. Still, when I'm doing the interview, this is a lot of stress to me. And by going through them from time to time, it helps me getting used to it and reduce this kind of level of stress.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very good practice to have. Should we go to
Okay,
the next question?
yeah. What is the next one?
Advanced Ruby topics for Rails developers, like modules, how gems work, or how to build one, or go through a gem code by highlighting the syntax or something like that.
And what's your standing on this?
My standing on this is that we can talk about technical stuff on the podcast, but it's very difficult for an audio podcast since this will be released as audio. Doing a code review, a code walkthrough would be very difficult and I don't think very helpful, but we can definitely tackle some technical topics on how we do things like that.
Yeah, there are several troubles in answering of this question. So if you have any kind of concrete questions related to advanced technical knowledge, feel free to reach out. But most likely, I will be able to cover them during my screencast episodes. And similar to Fede, I believe it will be way
Yeah.
easier. But producing content for like very advanced content for developers is tough because there are not many experts and advanced developers. And those who are like in comparing to junior developers, there is way less senior developers. And if there are advanced topics, those people usually don't learn from videos, but I found that they are more effective just by reading the documentation or the code itself to figure out some stuff. It's tricky because you need to always balance. If you produce a content, you spend hours or days of your time, sometimes free time, to do the research to make sure that things you will show are correct. And the more advanced content you produce, the more time it takes to actually produce that and
Yeah.
research that. But the audience, people who will be interested with it, is smaller and smaller. So it's conflict of interest, I would say. We need to live somehow.
Yeah.
And this is why, for senior people, the great channels are always often paid ones. That you need to buy a book, you need to buy a course, you need to buy an access to the community, and then you have a time of the experts on for your disposal. But this is usually paid. And I also want to produce more advanced content for the Hanami Mastery Pro for my premium subscription channel in the future.
Yeah. I agree with all you said.
The next one is from Ben. How do you organize code for concepts that are very similar but not exactly the same? Example, a work schedule and a work schedule template share many attributes, but one attached to employee and has more behavior.
Okay, my first answer to this is it depends a lot on the project itself, the technology you're using, the approach you're taking. That's my developer answer. Regarding what I would do from the top of my head, I usually tend to split things in objects because I am very object person. So I tend to group things that are the same in objects. And then you can also think of this in the folder structure where to put things. I tend to group things into subfolders and things like that, but I don't think that's the focus of the question. So yeah, my answer would be I try to organize things in objects, in classes and objects. Sometimes I will use a module, but more regularly I go to classes. What about you?
In Ruby, I also avoid modules, including modules. Occasionally I do, especially if there is already a gem that is based on that and they just follow what is there. but I have no clear answer for that. My first and most important stuff is I try to split the business logic part of the application logic. So in web applications, you have the part of the application that serves the request. It processes the request that coming from the client to the server and delivers the response, serializes the response. And this is very API specific. But this under the hood, you launch the business logic that is that also affects, like, fetches data, processes data on your databases, do some calculations, and that code can also invoked from rake tasks or even or Hanami console. And this is not real. So the input there should not be related to the API, to the controller, to the this application part of the system. And this is my first step when I'm trying to distinguish things and organize those differently. In Rise applications, I actually recorded a screencast how I did this split for Rise applications, and this was episode 7, I believe. And I really like that approach when you have just business logic independent and you can organize it freely however you want. But I also tend to use classes,
Yeah.
and I am more into functional programming now. And in Ruby, however it sounds, in our applications we use interactor pattern, or so you can also name it service objects or whatever, but it's more or less the same thing. When you have a one service that does one thing and you can call it only in the one way, it has just one a public method or something like that. Yeah. So that's my take on this.
Yeah, something to say is that I normally use modules just as namespaces. It's very rare that I include the module unless it comes from a library or from Active Record or whatever Railsy thing. I normally use them as namespaces.
There was at least one use case when I find it useful to include module. For example, when you have a sidekick worker and you want to, and this sidekick implements perform method, but sometimes you might want to extend this method itself. So you prepend your module with extending the functionality to add some tracking or add some successful notification or error notification wrapper around the perform method. And this can be done via the module inclusion. And I find it very useful.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, for the next question from Ken, how is Ruby's ease of use and learning curve compared to other languages, specifically for the web backend? And what is the future of Ruby? What's your take?
When Ruby came out, it was not popular at all. And when Rails came out, it was a mind-blowing change in the world of developing web applications. The ease of use and the time of delivery from the client requirements to delivering MVP was just mind-blowing. Super fast was producing web applications in Rails comparing to Java, PHP, or whatever else that was accessible at that point of time. But over time, over years, the competition caught up, and currently there are a lot of different frameworks where you can achieve similar things and produce code in a more or less similar efficiency. So there is not such clear border between Ruby and other languages like Python, who has Django, or even Elixir that has things,
Phoenix.
right? But so nowadays, it's just a matter of preference and matter of what kind of applications will you work on. If you have a very deep data processing calculations or real-time systems, maybe Ruby will not be the best approach. But as a lot of big Ruby projects proved, before you will hit issues related to Ruby being not performant enough, you will actually be completely huge enough to afford rewriting everything or splitting into microservices or whatever. I would say there is not a big difference, but I personally just love Ruby. I love Ruby syntax. I prefer it way more over the Python, for example. And if I would need to change my tech stack, I would more likely learn Elixir, but I cannot say too much about the ease of use of that.
Yeah. Yeah, my take on this is regarding learning curve. I'm torn. There are two views I subscribe to. I think Ruby is a very terse language. You can very easily write a program with Ruby since it's a scripting language. It's very easy to get into it. But on the other hand, it's a very complete language in terms of say syntax. So for a beginner, sometimes, unless you are well taught, it can be confusing. And my example for this is the eternal fight between Ruby and Python. Which is in Python, if you have to do something, there is one way to do it and only one way to do it. So if you search on Google how to do X, you get 100 responses and they all say the same or mostly the same. In Ruby, that's not the case. Ruby tends to allow us, or not allow us, because Python also allows it, but it's oriented to having multiple answers for the same question. And this thing, one great example of this is how you use blocks. Do you use curly braces? Do you use duet? And there is a discussion about that. The first approach is multiple statements. I use duend, single line statements, I use braces. But then there's the other way of thinking it, that if you have a return value, use braces. And if it's just a functional block, use duend. And there's a fight even there, even with something so small. And I'm not talking about implementing a feature. I'm talking about writing a block, right?
Yeah.
So it can be daunting for a first comer. My experience was not hard. I picked up the Pickaxe book and I really loved it. And I caught up on all of those things. I came from university learning Java and C and all those kinds of languages. And then I learned Python, which I really loved, until I didn't like it anymore because of the syntax of the indentation thing, which is crazy for me. And then I learned Ruby and I really liked it and all of that. Regarding the future of Ruby, if you're interested of knowing, first of all, if Ruby is dead, there is the page isrubydead.com, which is great. You should go and check it out. Do you think Ruby is going to die anytime soon? And does it
Oh
matter
no,
at all?
definitely not. Even a few weeks ago, there was a Rise Foundation put together with over $1 million funding at start, with a promise of 400k dollars per year of the participants to support content creators, open source projects, and other community things about Rise only. And Rise is not a huge Ruby ecosystem. So yeah, with so big projects on the web that are built in Ruby, and all new projects coming out every year, every month or every week, even in the world, I don't think Ruby will die anytime soon. And I don't think it matters too much. Ruby is fourth most paid language at the moment in the world, which is attractive. But even if it would fade away in next 10 years, in 10 years, if you will start learning Ruby now, in 10 years, you will be a senior, a very senior. And at that level, switching technologies to something different, something similar, or whatever, it's not a big problem. Companies even support that, even sponsor that by employing senior developers and providing funds for courses and a few months training sessions just for changing technologies to what they do. So if you are a senior, it doesn't matter what you use too much, in my opinion. So if you want to start, you can just start whatever works for you and whatever you like. And I definitely like Ruby. If I would, yeah, I don't even consider changing that anytime soon.
Yeah, same here. On the other hand, if first of all, what would it mean for a language to be dead? I think even if the project itself just stopped, which is an open source project, someone else would pick it up, I think. But say it actually stops and no one else cares. First of all, there are a lot of applications to be maintained. I just talked about this with a person the other day who had a project written in Rails 2. It's an old project with an old technology and it's still being maintained. And even if you are not maintaining projects anymore, you have to port them to something else. And to port them, you need to know the language as well. So yeah, I don't think first of all, a language can die. COBOL is still around. If that's not a good metric, I think nothing is. And on the other hand, even if it could die, there will still be work to be done using the technology.
Let's take an example, PHP, right? It was old when I was learning development at university. At that time, nobody had actually wanted to work with PHP. No, at that time, it was the only alternative. But a few years later, nobody wanted to touch a PHP at all. And now we have a Laravel framework, which they brought a lot of interest and a lot of new, fresh blood to the PHP language. And a lot of people are again interested in working with PHP, which for me personally is crazy, but this is how things work. It's just history, it just makes circles.
Yeah, of course.
So this is my take on this part.
Yeah.
And the last is from Ayuni, but it's very much related to what we discussed already. This is, why should I learn Ruby? I heard it's a dying language. And
yeah, go to that site. I said isrubydead.com.
I don't think it is a dying language. And it maybe depends on who actually talks about it. But if you think about cryptocurrencies, right? Cryptocurrencies are being dead every 4 years, every just a cycle. Every cycle
Yeah.
you will see messages and news about crypto is dead. About Ruby, every time. There is also a page that tracks how many articles are related to the Ruby being dead. And personally, I don't care because I just do what I like, and I like Ruby, and this is why I'm coding in Ruby. And as I mentioned before, I am a Hanami developer at the moment, and this is a niche in a niche. If Ruby has 5 or 10% of all the websites in the world, probably less because WordPress is everything. But if Ruby has 5% of websites made in the world, and Hanami has 0.5% of Ruby projects, still I'm getting success with Hanami. So it doesn't matter really. If you are good, if you are doing what you like, you will be able to gain a lot of success with whatever you do. Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
And that brings us to the end.
Yeah. Should we wrap up? How are you? How are we wrapping up this?
Thank you very much for that and for the attention, right?
Yes, exactly.
We
Thank you very much.
We need to actually learn how to close episodes. I need to listen some other podcasts to the end because usually I end up a few minutes before the end of the episode, and now I understand that it's not.
I listen to mine on my car, so I never can skip episodes. And they usually point people to the show notes, things like that, to the site. But we don't have that yet.
But when this will be released on podcasting platforms, definitely we will have the show notes. Yes, with links included that were mentioned in this episode. And I also plan to write the text version of the episode by using some kind of fancy scripting, but this is not a promise at all. Fede, how can people reach out to you?
On Twitter, Iachetti, which is very difficult to write, is Fiacheti. Yeah, that's the main way right now until I release my screencasting. What about you?
I'm everywhere, but Twitter is the main thing for sure right now. I have noticed a lot of Ruby community had started their shift to Mastodon, Ruby Social. I also have an account there, so if you will write to me on Mastodon, I will also notice that. As I said, you said a lot of success I got. I have not enough success to miss private messages, so definitely a long way in front of me. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We will post on our Twitter's channels the next form for the next episode. And see you in the next one.
Okay, see you next week, Seb, and see everybody else 2 weeks from now. Bye.
Bye.